Take a look around your room for a moment, take in every detail of it. Now do me a favor and close your eyes. Don't open them. Try and remember every detail. Do you remember where your dog is? Where your cat is? Where's the book you were reading just a little while ago? Where's your TV remote? Where's the closest exit? There's somebody at your door. Don't answer it. They can wait. Do you remember where your desk is? Where the stacks of papers are? Your pencil? Where are you anyways? Are you in your room? Maybe you're in an office or your living room? Are you in your kitchen perhaps? Are there knives in your kitchen? Do you have a gun? You might need one. The person's at your window now. They can see you with your eyes closed. You don't know who it is. Could be your best friend. It could be anybody. But how would you know? Are you ready in case the worst happens? They just opened your window. They're coming inside. They're holding something. You don't know what it is because your eyes are still closed. But I told you not to open them. You can ignore the man. Or maybe you can't. He's standing right next to you. Or is he? Is he really there? Maybe he is. Maybe he isn't.
Maybe you're just paranoid. My mother always told me people went to bars to disappear. Since I already felt stretched so thin light would shine through me, it seemed like as good a place to go as any. Better than most, even. The liquor would help me forget. Well, look at you. I flinched away from the hard Scrabble rasp at my elbow, spilling the cheap bourbon I was attempting to drown in. I hadn't seen the old man climb onto the stool beside me, but it was hardly a surprise. The rest of the patrons were completely ignoring me, and I'd been returning the favor. I'd lost myself in the gingerbread-colored depths of the burnt sugar and turpentine-scented liquor, my third glass, trying not to picture the scene back at my apartment. I drained the dregs of alcohol from the water-spotted tumbler. The napalm burn wiped the image momentarily from my synopsis, and I sighed in relief. I reached a shaking hand for the pile of tarnished coins on the bar and plucked up a quarter, the visage on it edged in black. I spun it on the uneven wood, watched it wobble, and snatched it back up. I couldn't bear to see what it would land on. The metal throbbed against my fingertips, warm as blood. Beside me, the man swung around, making the rickety stool creak. I caught a glimpse of scraggly hair, the color of wet clay, and watery amber eyes surrounded by pouches of wrinkles. The look in them was like the neon light shining in the bourbon, or fire reflected on the surface of a lake. Do you believe in ghosts? No. It came out a disagreeable grunt, but he didn't take offense. He kept watching me, mouth pursed in contemplation as I poured myself another slug of bourbon. I glanced over to see if he was expecting me to share, but his beer still sweated glistening beads of moisture. He lifted it to his lips, the color of raw liver. I turned my face away to discourage his attempts at conversation. My skin ached under the bruising weight of his gaze. I rubbed at the liquor's sticky surface of the bar, tracing decades-old water stains and burns from cigarettes whose ghosts still lingered in the hazy air. Both felt more substantial than me. He was undeterred by my rudeness. When he leaned closer, his breath puffed against my cheek, thick with hops and something darker, something unpleasant, like meat gone gray and greasy. My stomach did a slow roll. "Name's Charron," he pronounced with a throat thick with phlegm. White dots of spittle flecked his lips. "Friends call me Gary." "Jane." I took another drink, hoping to occupy my mouth with something other than conversation that made my brain ache. It didn't work. The bourbon made my tongue too loose. "Plain Jane." Rick's words. I'd always thought it sweet that he had a nickname for me, though after hearing his husky voice gasping and groaning and calling out, "Oh my God, yes, like that," with guttural astonishment as Bella swiveled her ample hips, I guess Plain Jane wasn't so charming a thing for my fiancé to call me after all. Desperate to distance myself from those thoughts, I whirled on my stool to face Gary, wobbling only a little. My head felt like a blister, throbbing, ready to pop. "Why are you asking about ghosts?" Part of me, the part that knew this entire evening was already nauseatingly cliche, expected the grisly old codger to tell me I looked like I knew something about being haunted. Instead of answering my question, he reached over and plucked the coin from my hand, flashed a brief grin, and spinning it over his cracked knuckles. "I've seen him. On the job." Gary leaned one elbow on the bar, ignoring the puddle of moisture that darkened the material of his threadbare suit jacket. A giggle bubbled up my throat. Gary nodded as if answering an unasked question. I stared at the broad, wrinkled face framed by thinning hair and struggled to picture the rumpled old man in front of me being confronted by a smoky apparition. My drinking buddy had probably once been a handsome man. The strong line of his jaw and bold slope of his forehead said so, but he didn't look at all well at the moment. I thought he must have been big, tall, broad-shouldered, and barrel-chested. Not gorgeous, but solid and good-looking. Now his sallow flesh hung on the bones of his face in wrinkled flaps. Despite his gauntness, the thin skin around his eyes and under his jaw was puffy and swollen. Once strong shoulders curled in towards a sunken chest. He appeared moments away from folding in on himself. First blood vessels spiderwebbed beneath the fragile skin of his cheeks and stained the jaundiced whites of his eyes. Considering the world-weary look in his eyes and his rumpled suit, I hazarded a guess. "You're a cop?" I was whispering, I realized. Empty glass up to my lips as if I was trying to hide what we were talking about from the rest of the bar's disinterested patrons. Maybe I was. It seemed ridiculous to talk about ghosts. There were worse things in the world. Real things that stole your breath and slipped into your heart like a knife. Gary nodded. I wasn't sure if he was agreeing with my words or my unspoken skepticism. "Of a sort," Gary replied against the lip of his beer bottle. I tasted metal on my tongue and poured myself another glass to wash it away. Gary tilted his head, red neon glittering in his eyes. "I worked as a detective in Vice once." Vice. The word conjured images of hookers with lipstick leers, mouths red and open, Bella's tongue curling around Rick's shaft. My stomach pinched and my heart lurched. I swallowed both back down. I sipped at the liquor, wincing at the burn in my throat, suddenly desperate to hear about Gary's ghosts. I would have figured homicide since we're talking about restless spirits. He picked at the label on the beer bottle, shaking his head. His hair brushed his shoulders, rustling like dry leaves, like Rick's heels sliding against our soft sheets. Mostly I spent my time busting up illegal books and taking the working girls off the streets for a few nights. Not too much excitement, really. A lot of paperwork, better than some other gigs I've had. His lips twitched into half a grin. I snorted into my glass. On the scarred wood of the bar, a fat fly wandered into a puddle of spilt bourbon. It twitched and flailed, wings fluttering uselessly. I closed my eyes, bothered by how broken it looked. Hardly sounds like a place for spooky stories. To me, ghost stories meant fog-shrouded graveyards and crumbling old Victorians, not seedy gambling dens and noisy city streets. Ghosts are everywhere, Janie. Mostly people just don't look. I shivered at his words, cold despite the heat of the liquor burning in my belly and the sweaty warmth of the bar. My heart squeezed. I scowled at Gary, or I meant to, but my eyes slid past him to the darkness outside the bar's wide front window. The streetlights flickered intermittently, splashing some message across the pavement in code. The street itself was nearly empty, cars passing every few minutes instead of in their normal steady stream. Though it was still early yet, or at least I thought it was. A glance at the big old-fashioned clock above the bar showed the hour hand hovering near the 11, not even midnight yet. Something white, a flash of headlights, flared just at the periphery of my vision as I turned to the old man. Shaking my throbbing head, I focused on my new friend, and slurped more warm liquor to cover up my momentary distraction. I choked on it, hacking to clear my throat, shoulders heaving, my airways burned, but I managed to catch my breath. So tell me about this one you saw, the ghost. Gary turned towards the window too, perhaps looking for whatever it was I'd seen from the corner of my eye. His hangdog face and profile was so full of sorrow it made me catch my breath. Tears stung my eyes, unease crawled up my spine, many-legged as a millipede, as my gaze slid around the room. It lit briefly on the owner, Trudy, where she leaned behind the bar. Trudy was bottle blonde, a sassy and feisty 40-something who'd always had a bit of a soft spot for me. She fed me free sodas all the times I served as designated driver for Rick and his buddies. She joked with all the patrons and never seemed to take anything, aside from tips. Seriously. But now she had a scowl on her face like a thundercloud as she murmured into the heavy black rotary phone she kept behind the bar. I hadn't been a detective long, Gary finally said, blinking slowly as his gaze wandered back to mine. Maybe a year. Could be 2. After this long, it's hard to say for sure, but I was still new enough that I always got stuck with the lion's share of the paperwork. I remember that. His chuckle was the uneven chop of a sputtering engine about to stall out. That was the hottest summer I ever remember. Till now. It was the Pansy Elliott case. I knew most of the regular girls that worked the corners down by the point. You try and get them off the street, hope they decide to do something else. He wiped his lips with gnarled fingers. But the sad truth is, most of them just went right back as soon as they were out. It's all they knew to do to get by. I thought of Bella. Other people had always called her unkind names because of her wild behavior. I defended her time and time again, told people she was just a free spirit, and who cared how many people a woman took to her bed. Now, burning with pain of betrayal, and past the point of being a little drunk, I heard Gary's words. It was all they knew to do, and my brain translated them to something more vicious. In keeping with the mood, once a whore, always a whore. Bourbon dribbled down my chin as I tipped the heavy glass to my lips, stinging a cut on my jaw I didn't remember getting. I swiped at the rivulet with the back of my hand, smearing the sticky liquid over my cheek. She was a pretty little thing, young, maybe 20. He paused, eyes on me, beer halfway to his mouth. How old are you, Janie? 22. A week ago. Rick took me out to dinner for my birthday and got my favorite chocolate cake for dessert. At home, he laid me in our bed and kissed every inch of me with such tenderness my heart nearly broke with it. I felt that way again now, a tightness in my chest that made it hurt to breathe. Gary shook his head, as if he was saddened by my words too. Pansy hadn't been on the street long, maybe a month or two. Long enough to have realized the reality of it, but not long enough that it'd worn her down much. She still had a bit of sparkle in her eye. I crossed my forearms on top of the bar and rested my cheek against them, my eyes on Gary. The sour sweet smell of liquor stinging my nose, mixed with the scent of overripe fruit and something bitter and mineral. Out in the hot night, I heard the rev of an engine, the squeal of tires on asphalt, the honk of a horn. Not uncommon in the city, but it sounded loud to my ears. I flinched at the throb of blood in my temples. I concentrated instead on the dim red-brown light of the bar. The hushed rumble of Gary's voice, the warm, thick air still stinging with the scent of smoke, even all these years after the indoor smoking ban. It all coalesced into a numbing sort of blanket that wrapped around me, insulating me from the outside world. I was pathetically grateful for it. Tears gathered on my lashes, but I blinked them away. Gary leaned over and patted my arm. His irises glowed orange, like a candle flame. And that fetid meat smell wafted from his suit again, and I swallowed hard as bile bubbled in my stomach. I've never been much good with crying females, he said, and for a moment I thought he was talking about me. I sniffled a little, but he smiled and continued. I realized he was still caught up in the story, but I was the only one in the squad room just then, so I had to deal with it, and there Pansy was, sitting at my desk, crying her pretty blue eyes out, with a nasty shiner, a split lip, and a gash on her temple, still seeping blood. She wanted to file charges on her pimp who'd roughed her up good when she didn't make enough the night before. I felt myself drifting a little between the alcohol and Gary's measured words. My body felt heavy, an ache in my bones and gut that throbbed. My eyes stung, and I blinked them rapidly. The neon sign above the bar smeared everything red. Seems brave, I muttered through numb lips, wondering if I'd ever been that. I thought of what I'd done when I saw Bella and Rick, and my heartbeat stuttered. Gary nodded. It was, especially considering her pimp was a real piece of work. I had been trying to get something to stick to him for months, but none of his girls would talk. Too scared. Pansy wasn't, though. Between sobs, she was singing prettier than a canary. Name of his associates, John's, everything. She was real upset, which she had a right to be, because according to her, Ray had hit her so hard he knocked her out and left her bleeding on the floor of her apartment. As soon as she woke up, she went straight to the precinct. Lights flashed by outside, red and blue, as if conjured by Gary's story. I shivered at the thought and shook my head. Just the booze. Cop cars were hardly a novelty in the city. This doesn't sound like any ghost story I've ever heard. Aren't there usually creepy noises and shrouded corpses? I expected Gary to chuckle or crack a joke. Maybe I hoped for it. He didn't either. Instead, he sipped his beer. That's because those are just stories, Janie. They're not true. He said it so matter-of-factly that I could only stare at him. I shifted my legs on the rungs of the stool. They were starting to tingle with pins and needles from sitting on the unstable seat. I had no idea how long I'd been at the bar. I couldn't remember much of anything between seeing Rick and Bella twined together and the time Gary sat down beside me. Had it been dark when I ran out of the apartment, I thought perhaps I had wandered a while, lost, before I saw the familiar sign and found my way onto the uncomfortable stool. I knew I must have looked terrible, because Trudy had left me the bottle of bourbon, though I didn't remember that part earlier. Still, the bottle was there, so it must have happened. I picked at a torn cuticle on my thumb, scraping away the dried blood staining the nail bed. Gary stared into my eyes as if trying to read something there. I had no idea what. The other patrons paid us no attention. I wondered what we must look like to them. A tired old man in a wrinkled suit looming over an obviously drunk girl in a pale sundress dotted with poppies like spatters of blood, whose eyes were swollen from crying. It was like a real bad Hopper painting. I took down everything Pansy said. His voice cracked a bit. He sipped his beer and started again. I was real excited despite her distress. I wanted to finally get that scumbag on something. I told her she needed to get herself to the hospital and have her head checked out. She begged me to bring Ray in as soon as possible. She was afraid to go back to her apartment, scared he'd find out she came in. I told her I would and headed out to check out the scene. I tried to picture a young, unwrinkled Gary, fresh off the beat and filled with an enthusiasm for his job. He'd managed to get one corner of the label on his beer bottle up and was scratching at it with one long yellowed nail. Her apartment was on the 7th floor of a flop house. It had been a nice hotel once, but the carpets were rotting through. All the crystals from the chandeliers had been broken, and the wallpaper was peeling. I remember the walls in the lobby were all down to lumpy plaster, and rusty water had leaked down them to stain like blood. The whole place smelled like stale rat turds and BO. Gary stopped then, turning back towards the window behind us. I couldn't move, but followed his gaze. More flashing lights went by, dragging me from the story and back into a world where there was no such thing as ghosts, and best friends did things to fiancés that made them shout to the ceiling of my bedroom. My vision went momentarily, all white and red. I felt a burst of jagged anger in my chest. I wanted to slap at Gary's arm and demand he continued, but my hands were too numb to lift. Roomy golden eyes slid down to my grimacing face. Gary chewed his thick lower lip for a second. Those cop cars. Back to the story. I didn't care about the cop cars, or what I'd left back in my apartment. I cared about Gary's ghost story. He sighed, a tired, leaking air, but nodded. Just as I got to the 6th floor landing, I heard Pansy scream, and I started running. Because that scream, Gary shuddered, pale face going even whiter. It sounded like a girl looking her worst nightmare in the eye. I could almost hear it in my head. a high-pitched tearing keen that hurt my ears like screeching metal, or Bella's tea kettle yell. Nausea rolled through me just at the thought of it, and white light speared into the back of my eyes. Still better than thinking of Rick and the sounds of his voice when he whispered, "Christ, PJ, I love you so much," in my ear, or shouted, "Jane, what are you doing?" I closed my eyes, refusing to hear him. And then what? I made it to the 7th floor in about half a second. I was fast back then, before the cancer got me. I think of running down the stairs from my 2nd floor apartment, ears ringing. The world sways and ripples around me. Gary's voice tolls like a bell inside my head. No one came out to see what the screaming was about, but that was hardly surprising in a place like that. Pansy's apartment door was closed, so I kicked it in, my gun already in my hand. He reached over and refilled my glass, nudging it towards me with 2 fingers. He sipped out of the bottle, smacking his droopy lips, still twirling my quarter on his knuckles. First time I drew my piece, come to think of it. He scrubbed his mouth on his sleeve, the fabric looking shiny and dark, worn from repetitive use. From the other end of the bar, I could hear Trudy arguing in a low voice with someone. She sounded upset, and I felt the distant urge to comfort her, but my body might as well have been made of petrified wood for all I could control it. It took a second, Gary said, and for the first time I could see his weary amber eyes had darkened to umber with the shadows of the memory. It took a second for the smell to hit me. That place smelled so bad as it was. Gary was pretty rank himself, reeking of burnt oil and rubber, blood and shit. I swallowed heavily and shifted further away from him, wondering how I'd missed the stench earlier. Maybe some of it was the liquor. I'd never been so drunk in my life. I doubted I could stand up straight if I tried. Gary's eyes were steady on mine, now dark as pitch, but still glistening like flame. Pansy was just where Ray left her, on the floor. He'd caved her temple right in. She'd been dead by the time she hit the floor, and laid there all night and all morning in the heat. I frowned, my head already beginning to throb. I'd never been hungover before, but it felt like death. It was her ghost that came into the precinct. I snorted because for all that my unease had been building while Gary told me his story, I still found the idea of ghosts ridiculous, especially when I knew you could be haunted by other things so easily, like the actions of others, or your own. Dried blood flaked from my hands down onto the bar, tinging the spilled bourbon red. No other way to explain it, Gary replied. How else would I know to go to her apartment? Plus, I had the filled out report, full of names and details of meetings I shouldn't have. I waved him away, surprised at the sudden lightness of my limbs, where before I'd felt too heavy, now it seemed almost as if I could float. Yeah. Did you get Ray? Did he go to prison? Gary's mouth pressed together in a tight line, as if I'd missed the point. Eventually. Not for Pansy, though. Couldn't explain how I got the information, you understand. But we got him in the end. It always comes around. And she did what she intended to do, I think. Her final act. They've all got one, you know. Their last thing. Something they need to do before they can move on. There were more flashing lights outside now, and sirens. A few of the other patrons drifted toward the front window, blocking the view of the darkened street. One of them murmured about an accident around the corner. Someone stepping into the road said something about bodies. Trudy's voice wobbled with tears as she replied, but her fist was pressed to her mouth and I couldn't make out her words. One of them might have been my name, or not. Gary still stared at me expectantly. I sat up straight, bouncing on the wobbly stool, and narrowed my eyes at him. Why did you tell me this story? If it had a point, I'd missed it, and now I was feeling surly. There hadn't been any justice for Pansy. Ray may have gone to prison, but he didn't really pay for what he did to her. People deserve justice. He cocked a crooked thumb toward the front window. Don't you want to see what's going on out there? There was a high-pitched whine in my ears. I shook my aching head to clear it, sending a wave of pain and nausea down to my toes. No. My denial came out a shout, but no one turned to look. Gary sighed, wafting air scented with the coppery tang of blood over my face. I squeezed my eyes shut again, the sadness welling from his pores, trying to breathe through the increasing pressure in my chest. She's gone. That wasn't Gary's voice, so close to my ear. My eyes popped open, shock kicking at my heart. But he was the only one there. Everyone else was still staring out into the night. Trudy cried in earnest now. One of the other patrons put his arm around her shoulders. The pressure on my chest slid away, and tears pricked my own eyes. Beside me, Gary patted my hand with gentle fingers. The other hand spun the discolored coin on the bar. I think you should go look, Janie. You can't make me. I sounded stubborn and childish. But I'd seen enough bad things for one day, and I knew whatever was happening out in the street wasn't going to make me feel any better. No, ma'am, that ain't my job. He sighed, the sound heavy as a bellows. My lower lip pushed out, and I sucked it back in, tasting blood and bourbon. Is it your job to tell random drunk women strange stories? It wasn't funny, but I snickered anyways. Gary shook his head at me, but he was watching Trudy cry. Oh, these days I guess you could say I'm in transportation. I felt as if my ribcage had been suddenly pulled open, my heart exposed and raw with fear. Gary's eyes, burning deep, were steady on my face, and his smile was tender. I turned back to the bar, away from that smile and thoughts of what my final act would be. I placed my hand on either side of my empty glass, staring down at my neatly trimmed nails. There was a cut on the webbing between my thumb and forefinger, but the blood had already begun to dry. And it wasn't that bad anyways. I felt Gary swing himself back around with another weary sigh, but he didn't say anything else. Beside us, Trudy choked, voice whimpered. I can't believe she'd do something like that. She was such a sweet girl. I ignored her, and the pain in my belly and chest and the blood spattered on my dress. I ignored Gary with his spinning coin and flames for eyes, and carefully poured another few fingers of bourbon into my glass. Alex stood in front of the glass, sipping hot chocolate. Welcome to winter in Missouri. If you don't like it, wait 10 minutes. Kim looked up from her book and blanket. What? You don't like the snow? Oh, I love the snow. We're gonna go play in it as soon as I finish this. It's more the fact that it was 70 and windy 2 days ago, and now we have 8 inches of snow on the ground. Here's to consistency. He raised his mug, slurping the dregs of cocoa. Kim glared at him. I don't play in the snow. She settled further under her blanket on the couch. Yeah, you do. Alex passed the couch on his way to the sink. He snatched off her blanket and ran into the kitchen, giggling like an idiot. Hey. Kim leapt up after him, her dark ponytail lashing back and forth. Come on, Alex, I'm already cold. He set his mug in the sink and flipped up the faucet handle, letting the mug fill with water. Kim grabbed for her blanket, but he held it behind his back where she couldn't reach. An all too common game. Oh, you'll be fine, babe. Just come out for an hour. Throw some snowballs, maybe build a snowman. We can make snow angels. She crossed her arms over her chest and tapped her foot. Pass. He locked his hands together in front of her, dropping the blanket. Please, tell you what. You come out for an hour, and I'll clean up after dinner tonight. Kim ceased her tapping. She eyed him with suspicion. Everything? Dishes and all? Every last crumb, gorgeous. Fine. 1 hour, not a second more. Good enough. Alex scooped up the blanket and slapped her ass as he passed her. Alex, grab your coat. Alex led the way. He grabbed his coat from the closet by the front door, fished his gloves and scarf out of the pockets, and bundled up. He even found his woolly hat that looked like a Viking helmet. The instant they stepped through the front door, Kim gasped. Crap, it's cold out here. Well, there is snow on the ground. He gathered a handful from the porch railing and packed it into a ball. Kim backed away, her arms raised. Alex, if you hit me with a single snowball, you're sleeping on the couch for a month. He held the snowball before his face, turning the ball as if to study it. What are you doing? He rubbed at his stubbly chin, deciding if it'd be worth it. Kim smacked the back of his hand. His own snowball hit him on the nose. Kim hopped down the steps while he sputtered. She turned to face him as he lobbed the snowball well over her head. Snow and ice covered the woods surrounding the house. Towering evergreens drooped with the extra weight. Tiny birds hopped about on the white blanket. A scene from a Christmas card. Wow, this is beautiful, she said. Alex came down the steps, rubbing his nose with a fluffy mitten and trying to blow the snow out of his nose. Told you so. What are you, 7? He shrugged. Ish. Only the warm house escaped the weather's wrath. Kim's car looked like a misshapen igloo. The dark windows of his SUV stared out of the snow, gray, empty eyes. Kim headed towards the trees, trudging through the snow. She stopped halfway. Alex? Yeah. Have you already been out this morning? Nope. Why? She pointed to the ground. There's footprints here. Big ones. Oh? Maybe we have a Bigfoot. He hustled over to join her. No. Kim leaned over the tracks. These look weird. Whoa. He leaned closer as well. Each print consisted of a wide circle pressed right down to the wet grass with 6 smaller circles around it. Kim sidestepped to the next print. Whatever made them had a wider stride than her. What are they? She asked. Got me. I've never seen anything like them. She looked at him with a mischievous grin. Let's follow them. See where they lead. Or not Miss Mystery Novel. These could be bear tracks for all we know. I've never seen a bear in Ripley County. Besides, they're all hibernating. Alex opened his mouth to speak. Come on, Alex, you're the one who begged me to come outside. He groaned. Damn it. Fine. But I'm using you as a meat shield if whatever made these tries to eat us. Kim marched into the woods ahead of him. Or if it turns out to be our hillbilly neighbors hopped up on eggnog, waving their guns around. She didn't reply, but kept walking. The tracks followed a vague path for the first 100 yards or so. Then they swerved into the trees. Babe, check it out. Alex pointed to a clump of cedar trees growing right on top of each other. Something had passed through the middle of them, dislodging the snow and snapping branches. Something big. Branches were broken a good 10 feet from the ground. The tracks continued on the other side of the trees. Are we sure we want to follow these things? Alex pulled his hat lower on his head. He'd never hear the end of it if he chickened out and went home. Not far beyond the cedar trees, the strange prints led to a stream and stopped at the water's edge. Where? Kim searched the ground nearby. They vanished. Alex about-faced. Oh well, time to go home. We came, we saw, moving on. Wait, she grabbed his sleeve. Look there. Maybe 50 yards upstream, a small tree the size of his arm had been snapped over the water. Its yellow innards stuck out against the white snow. Kim clambered up the bank towards the tree. Alex, plotting ways to use this against her later, followed. She reached the broken tree and stood on her tiptoes, trying to reach the exposed section. Kim stood a solid 5'5", but was too short. What could do this? She asked. Giant beavers, Paul Bunyan. Kim glared at him. I don't know, nothing friendly. Alex, look. More tracks. The new prints led away from the stream towards a small hill. Kim took off after them. Alex jogged along behind her. She stopped. He slipped and fell, trying not to run into her. Ugh, why? He shook snow off of his arms and brushed muck off his chest. Kim flapped her hand at him. Alex. He got to his feet, grumbling. What now? A cave. I had no idea this was here. There are caves all over the place around here. Not exactly news. He wiped a bit of mud off his jeans. Oh look, the weirdo tracks go right into it. Great. We know where they lead. Now we can go. Kim headed for the entrance. Are you nuts? Let's check it out. Alex sighed. Should have spent the day playing video games like a reasonable person. He followed Kim through the narrow opening in the hillside. Moist, earthy air assaulted his nose. In the slice of light coming through the entrance, he saw Kim kneeling over a shadowy shape. What did you find? She pulled her ever-present cell phone from her pocket and tapped the screen. White-blue light burst from the phone, illuminating the pile of bones at her feet. Kim yelped and scurried back. Gross. Alex took a step closer. The most obvious bone was what appeared to be a cow's skull. Also represented were deer, rabbit, small birds, and perhaps even a cat. Kim moved behind him. This is horrible. No kidding. As she shoved her phone in her pocket, the glow of the screen glinted off something at the back of the cave. What the? Alex moved towards the spot. Alex? Not sure. Get your phone out again. Why didn't you bring yours? Because mine isn't surgically attached to my hand. He felt her stare without turning to face her. Kim took out her phone and turned the light on again. In the glare, Alex found the source of the reflection, a piece of metal against the back of the cave. He reached down to pick it up, but the metal seemed to be embedded in the wall. Alex dug his fingers in behind the metal and tugged with both hands. The hunk shifted a bit. Bigger than I expected. Give me a hand, babe. Kim nodded and, holding her phone in her left hand, grabbed the piece of metal right above his hands. On 3. 1, 2, 3, pull. They tugged the metal forward, shifting a large portion of the wall in the process. A door? Kim stepped back, holding her phone up high. Alex examined the metal. He rapped his knuckles against it. Dents and scrapes covered the whole piece. It's like a piece of sheet metal someone beat flat with their feet. He leaned into the tunnel behind the door. See anything? Nothing. It's too dark. I'm not sure about this, Alex. Maybe we should leave. Oh, now you want to go back. Freaky prints in the snow are fine, but secret door in a cave is too spooky. Freaky prints might be a cool animal. Secret door might be serial killer. Alex held out his hand for her phone. Then I'll go first. While he's killing me, you can run away. She handed him the phone with shaking hands. Comforting, Alex. Really comforting. He flashed her his most reassuring smile and turned down the tunnel. He moved slow, shining the light in slow circles around the walls, ceiling, and floor. This looks like it was dug recently, Kim said. Alex nodded. The tunnel reeked of fresh turned earth. But by who? A few feet further on, a familiar sound reached their ears. Water? Kim asked. I think so. Alex raised the phone higher. At the edge of the light beam, he saw movement. Another couple steps revealed a flowing stream. The roar of water reached deafening levels as they drew closer. Alex paused at the water's edge, scanning about with the light. Upstream, water poured from the dirt ceiling, while downstream it swept around a bend in the tunnel. As he swept the light over the ledge, running parallel to the stream, Kim gasped. He spotted them too. More of those weird tracks on the muddy stone. They followed the ledge, one right after the other. Alex held the phone in front of him. He reached back and took Kim's hand in his. Be careful, she muttered. He nodded and led the way onto the ledge. Precarious didn't begin to describe it. Aside from being soaking wet, the ledge was maybe a foot wide. After a couple ungainly steps, Alex had to let go of Kim's hand. He leaned his right hand against the dripping wall for better balance. Walking like amateur tightrope artists, they reached the bend in the tunnel. Alex stopped to wipe the soggy phone on his jacket. Not that it did any good. His jacket was soaked through. He glanced over his shoulder to check on Kim. She flashed him a small smile from between curtains of sopping hair. Alex returned her smile and trudged on. The ledge turned into a ramp on the other side of the bend. Alex struggled to stay upright. Kim slipped twice, almost immediately. Alex turned to help her. She glared up at him, wiping the muck from her hands on her already stained jeans. Alex held out a hand to help her up. Come on, he said, hoisting her up with a grunt. Got to go slow and careful. Kim started to snark back, but slipped again. Alex watched the switch in her eyes. She knew what was about to happen. Alex dropped the phone and grabbed for her, but he was too late. His chilled fingers grabbed at wet, muddy clothes and nothing else. Kim plunged sideways into the rushing stream. Kim. He snatched up the phone and aimed the light at the stream. He expected her to hit the water and resurface instantly. Alex waited several eternal seconds, sweeping the phone's light up and down the stream. The stream must have carried her away. Alex slid and skidded down until the ground leveled out again. Here the roar of the water calmed. Instead of a turbulent stream beside him, Alex swept the light out over a sprawling subterranean lake. He cupped his hands around his mouth and screamed, "Kim!" The only response was his own echo. "Come on, come on, come on." He began to pace at the water's edge, sweeping the light over the lake in wide arcs. "Come on, where are you? Kim!" Alex swore and kicked a stone into the water. "Kim!" He spotted something, a flash of white in the water. He moved the light back in a slow sweep. The phone beeped, the sound of the battery dying. 10% power, enough to last a few more minutes. The light moved over a patch of white in the dark water, one of Kim's socks. She floated face down in the water. "No, no, no, Kim." Alex stripped off his jacket, dropped the phone, and dove into the water. He swam to her in the dark, grabbed her, rolled her over. Alex listened for her breathing. Nothing. Her skin already felt cold. He kicked back, pulling her towards solid ground, and the light pointing uselessly at the ceiling. "Please, please, Kim." His fingers and toes were numb. The cell phone beeped again. Alex struck something with his foot, something solid, in open water. He halted for a moment, gasping, his chest on fire. Nothing. The cavern and the lake were empty. He kicked again, harder, the shore drawing closer. The phone beeped again. His right hand brushed a rough surface, like softer sandpaper. He whipped his head around but saw nothing. A thick coil snared his right foot, jerking him down. Alex yelped, grabbing Kim for dear life. He kicked away, but the coil tightened. A tentacle as wide as his forearm. He struck at the snare on his leg, but its grip grew stronger. The phone beeped again. Alex spun in the water, hoping to kick at the tentacle's owner. The chill in his bones went straight to his heart. Two white oval eyes stared back at him. In a frenzy, Alex tore free of the monster's grasp. He pulled Kim's lifeless form to shore. The cell phone beeped again as his hand slapped the wet stone. Alex pulled himself up next to his jacket and heaved Kim up behind him. He had her halfway out of the water when something jerked her back. Another pair of pale oval eyes glared back up at him. Not just one pair. 6 pairs of eyes glowed in the dark water, all moving toward him with alarming speed. The phone beeped again. He lunged back, hugging Kim from behind. The monster in the lake tugged hard. A second set of eyes stopped near the first. Before Alex had a chance to react, the two creatures ripped Kim from his numb hands and pulled her under. The phone beeped again. "Kim." More eyes settled below, peering up at him. A tumultuous splashing toward the water nearby. Out of the turbulence crawled a nightmare creature. 6 round legs ending in a circle of spines that gouged the rock propelled the monster toward him. Alex scrambled back, slipping on his jacket. The phone beeped again. Pale, glowing eyes at least 10 feet high bore down on him. A thick crab's claw swiped at his feet, its owner emitting an angry clicking sound. Alex retreated further down the shore, the stone ledge narrowing with every step. The crustacean creature gave chase, crawling along the wall at an odd tilt, its colossal claws snapping at him, missing by millimeters. The ledge became too thin. Alex shuffled further, his back against the wall. His feet slipped on the wet stone. The monster stopped. The foam beeped in the darkness. The creature's pincers snapped at him, unable to reach. Alex sighed, even allowed a nervous chuckle. It couldn't reach him. The monster tried to scuttle closer, but its clumsy legs stumbled on the slick stone. Alex checked the lake to his right. His heart stopped. His breath caught in his throat. Dozens, if not hundreds, of glowing oval eyes stared up at him from under the water. If one came up out of the water in front of him. Something heavy brushed against his ankle through his jeans. A tentacle extended from among the landward creature's legs. The tendril slithered around his legs and jerked him forward in its iron grip. The creature leapt into the lake, pulling him along. Alex scraped at the wet stone as he slipped into the water. The phone beeped again. Temptation looms in front of me. To anyone else, it looks like a bridge, a perfectly formed arc over a divided highway. Stone and concrete, iron and rust. It's dense and heavy, yet somehow still light and airy. This bridge seems innocent, but I know it's secret. I can see below the surface, to where the spirit that lives here twines around the physical beams and spars holding the roadway aloft. I can see its decadent shadow, blending rebar and mist into a tantalizing thing that calls to me, begging me to join with it. Bridge and not bridge. It's contradictory, attractive and repulsive in equal measure. A truck rattles behind me, shaking the ground where I stand, staring at the bridge ahead of me, my heart pounding with anticipation. 2 lanes of traffic snake under the concrete curb, metallic rivers that sparkle in the sun below flowing into the darkness and then out again in an endless stream of rolling wheels. Hidden in its wide concrete span, I know the shadow is alive. Not alive in the usual animal sense, but I feel something. A dark spirit. This darkness wants love. It wants me. It wants me as its lover. I am horrified by the idea, yet a tiny part of me is curious, and I return each day to listen. Some days the screeching traffic drowns it out, and on sunny days I hear only the wind. Today is a lovely overcast gray day, and that sweet darkness ensnares me easily, draws me forward into its reach. As I reach the base of the bridge, the air thickens, stinky with fuel and flowers. My first step onto the bridge walkway awakens an intense yearning inside me that leaves me breathless. With my next step, a tsunami of lust envelops me, blinding me to the world for a long moment. When I can see again, the shadow coaxes me to climb the gradual rise high above the lanes of oblivious vehicles. I stop at the apex of the 2-lane overpass. Behind me, a car drives by. The breath of its passage ruffles my hair. I'm alone here, but I'm not. The shadowy spirit pulses under the bridge, a dark presence that urges me to mount the railing, spread my arms wide, and step off, falling into its embrace. I can't decide if it would be a good thing or a terrible thing, but it is moot. There is a metal mesh suicide barrier attached to the handrail, preventing me from lust-driven folly. Every time I step onto this bridge, I am seduced by those unknowable shadows. My reaction, intertwined loathing and longing, is the price I pay to cross the bridge, and I pay it willingly every day. I could take a different route, but I don't. I'm testing myself against it. At least, that is what I tell myself when I'm at home. When I stand here, linking to the darkness below. I'm not certain I think at all, flooded with strange black feelings. My logical thoughts scatter, tiny mice hiding from a terrifying panther. Under the stink of diesel, I can smell the jungle rain of the hunt. But am I the hunted or the hunter? Does it matter when you are full of love? I hear words in the whispering of tires on the wet pavement far below. Jump, jump. You know you want to. Everything you ever wanted is here, in the shadows. Jump. Join us. Love us. It is the most persuasive offer I have ever been given. I've never felt this anywhere else. Only here. This place is an intersection, a crossroads between places, between the world I live in and the world of the spirit. I don't know if the shadow presence was here before the bridge was built, or if it came after, but this location is an open doorway, allowing something alien to peek through. I'm not the first to hear its siren call. Flowers line the sidewalks, along with photos, teddy bears, crosses, mementos of other battles this shadow has waged, won or lost. I don't know, nor do I care. I only care about my battle. Whether this is a summons to love or to death, it is a beguiling choice. I am wanted, so desperately that it hurts. I sway in place, mesmerized by the traffic flowing beneath me. My hands clench so tightly on the railing that my fingers cramp with pain. The darkness below the bridge tugs at me, caresses my skin, raising goosebumps of pleasure. Dimly I hear a car stop on the bridge behind me, a voice asking if I am okay. I nod my heavy head and they leave, but the spell is broken. I unpeel my frozen fingers from the slender rail separating me from the promise of happiness, of love. I drag myself away from my would-be lover. Stumbling off my bridge, a shiver of cold passes over my body, and instantly the tugging sensation is gone, as ephemeral as mist. I have lost the seductive compulsion to fly into its embrace. The scent of decaying flowers follows me down the rain-washed street. I realize I am drenched. My shoes squelch when I walk, but I don't recall when it rained, or even how long I stood on the bridge this time. I try to regain the feeling of standing high above the mysterious and welcoming presence. I imagine being part of it, but it is faint and disconnected from my regular life. The memory as hollow and short-lived as a rainbow-hued soap bubble. Tears pricked at me, scald my cheeks. I want more than a transient experience. I want more. I want to always be enveloped in that sensation of homecoming. Lonely for something I can't name, I prowl through the rain-washed canyon of buildings. Searching, I awake to sunshine in tangled sheets, missing the rain. My shadow never comes out in the sunshine. Only misty, wet days beckon me to its side. I wish the sunlight was gone, but in truth, I am relieved. I am unclean today, unworthy of its attention. Harold rolls over beside me, his heaviness pulling the sheets awry. He'd come last night for our weekly date. I'd been quiet, unsure how to break it off with him. What reason could I use that he'd understand? It sounds crazy even to me. I can no longer remember why I started seeing Harold in the first place. His flesh is too meaty. The shadows under his chin and arms resemble my beloved shadow. I remember a time, so long ago, when I was excited to hear Harold's voice and welcomed his touch. Now those days seem like a dream. Only my shadowy bridge seems real. Harold kissed me this morning as he left smiling, leaving me to slink my way here to stare guiltily at my would-be lover, hidden below its bridge skin, barred by the too bright sunshine that scrapes at my eyes with tiny blades of light. I am going mad. I am falling in love with darkness. Somehow my steps have brought me back here, but the sunshine has hidden my beloved from me, and it's only concrete and metal spars suspended over a roadway. I sulk back home, ashamed and lonely. Days pass slowly, and I wait anxiously for the rain, hoping my shadow will return. I haven't felt its damp touch since Harold. I haven't returned any of Harold's calls since then either. I can't. I hope my lover will forgive me, although I don't feel I deserve it. Harold leaves increasingly panicked messages that I ignore. He is not the one for me. I know this now. I need my shadowy love. I have begun to hate the sunlight as it keeps my beloved from me. At last, the skies cloud over and the sunlight dims. My heels click happily to our meeting. I have dressed for our reunion. I arrive breathless and spend one last moment savoring the anticipation before I step up onto the bridge. A river of lust sweeps me up. My heart stutters. It is back, and it still loves me. Dark tendrils swirl out from under the wet asphalt, happy in my return. I am forgiven for my transgression. It still wants me. Mist curls between my painted toenails and hides the roadway far below, muting the sounds. Oh, how I've missed this. I want to caress my shadow, inhale its thick air, recline in its clasp. My skin tingles with desire. My nipples so hard they hurt. Wonderful pain that shreds my sanity. I rush to the top, eager, heedless of the flowers and mementos. My fingers clutch the worn railing. My heart slams in my chest so hard I am lightheaded with yearning. I cannot wait a moment longer. I have prepared for today, and I pull heavy-duty wire cutters from my purse. Dropping the bag to the ground, the wires barring me from my love fall away. Passing through the arms of my shadowy lover harmlessly, and clanging onto the cars underneath my bridge. Screeching tires, both behind and below me. A faraway scream echoes in my ears. I glance up and dimly recognize Harold at the foot of the bridge. He will try to stop me. I must hurry. I snip faster, my muscles bunching into the task. Another piece of thick metal mesh falls free, leaving an opening to my love. I lift myself up and over, cartwheeling into the abyss. Faintly, I hear Harold screaming my name, but it is too late. I have already let go. My shadow catches me, eases me into its embrace, and I explode. I am home. I float on the air, below my beloved bridge. The cars slip by under me, disturbing my limbs. I straddle the road and let them pass. I don't want them. I want him, the weeping man. I can see his emotions as clearly as I once saw his face. For a moment I can't remember his name. Then it comes back to me. Harold. He's confused by the racking tears. His grief is too strong. He doesn't think he has the right. He hasn't loved this woman, me, deeply enough for such emotion. He hasn't known me long enough. If he had, he should have known what was going on. Would have been in time. He thinks he could have stopped me, could have saved me. Harold keeps his eyes lowered, not in respect, in fear. He doesn't want to see that memory again, but straining with effort, I push it to the forefront of his thoughts. The woman's unforgettable happy waltz up the sidewalk, the casual snipping of the wires, and her fluttering leap over the side, followed by his mad scramble to the ragged-edged hole, screaming her name. In time, her body twisted around to smile up at him from below. Harold shies away from the rest of the vision. He hasn't told anyone what he saw. He can barely acknowledge it to himself. It terrifies him, and that is the edge I need. I call his name, but he doesn't hear me. My voice, for now, is only a sibilant whisper at the edge of his hearing, enough to make him look up, but no more. A patch on the suicide barrier draws his gaze. The patch is a repair of the woven metal strands, a different color than the original, visibly mute testimony to the fact of my existence and my leap. The smell of roses clogs his throat, his floral offering to me at his feet. It joins the others on my bridge. I whisper louder. He senses something, I can tell. He strains to drown me out with useless prayer. He leans on the railing, pressing his forehead into the cold metal, denting his skin. This metal skein is meant to prevent my prey from joining me, but it hasn't worked, and the many tributes scattered along its lengths say it never will. There are dozens of memorials, dozens of repaired holes. I remember every one. I am every one. My lovers surround me, are joined with me, watching avidly as I woo this man into our embrace. Each has wooed their own to join us. Our dimpled darkness is made of sparks of blackness, each a soul added to ourselves with love. We have been here long before the bridge, before the cars, when humans avoided us and we fed infrequently. We are ancient. Harold leans harder on the cold barrier. It flexes gently as I did when I floated on the dark arms of the shadow. This is the memory he can never tell anyone. The shadow is real. I'm not gone. He saw me join the darkness, disappear into it, smiling and laughing. He saw me blissful in my new lover's midnight embrace, and the memory of it frightens him. We eat his fear, sating our hunger. His terror will be my wedge, my way of inching into his mind, coaxing him to join us. Under a perfect gray sky, my shadow pulses in time to his heartbeat. He finishes his prayer. I whisper his name as he turns to go. He gives the flower-strewn, shadow-doused bridge one last look. And in that look, I know he will come back. And each time my voice will be clearer to him. One day soon, perhaps next week or next month, he will climb over the railing and take his own leap of faith. And we will catch him. The winter wind swept through the forest, whistling through the bare branches, stirring the twigs and dirt on the ground. An owl turned its head and watched it pass. The insects stopped their nibbling and listened. In the distance, the howl of a lone wolf came to an abrupt stop. The frosted dirt began to splinter like a windshield struck by a pebble, cracks spreading outward in all directions. From the epicenter, a small bulge formed, then a second. Two sharp, curved claws pierced the growing mounds, then a third and a fourth, wiggling, twisting, trying to break free. Suddenly they stopped, then disappeared back into the ground. A still silence overcame the forest, as if nature itself was holding its breath. The ground began to rumble. Grains of dirt bounced in agitation. A paw rose from the cracks, then a second. Between them, a head ripped through its earthly confines. Pebbles of debris landed like hail around the thing coming from the ground. Its skull was covered with patches of dry, leathery skin, cracked like arid land. Its eyelids opened to hollow orbits, dark as the starless night. Its nose was flat and wide, with nostrils flaring, quivering as they took in the various scents the wind blew its way. The animals of the forest, brave enough from the winter cold, were brave no longer. Some burrowed into the ground, some climbed, many fled. Even the moon didn't dare look, and it summoned a thick, gray cloud to hide behind. Long, thin arms, the color of the dirt itself, stretched up to the sky. Each paw sprawled out, letting a stream of dirt trickle to the ground. Then the arms came crashing down. A shockwave shook the trees. A cloud of dirt rose from the ground. The head as well rose, and the clouds dissipated, revealing the jaw, the mouth, the deviously wide mouth. The creature's teeth were short, jagged and numerous. One row hid another, which hid another, which hid another. Each row moved independently like an agitated swarm of sharpened bone. Its jaw protruded slightly, giving it the impression, not entirely erroneous, that the creature was led by its mouth. With its head arched back, arms pushing down on either side, it pulled itself out of the ground. Maggots slithered out of its neck. Beetles and bugs poured out of its chest and back. The creature convulsed, spewing a horde of insects from its horrid, decomposing body. The wind passed by the creature's tremoring nostrils. So many scents, so many strong scents. Dirt, worms, and decay. The smell of smoke coming from the west. The smell of stagnant water from the east. Its nostrils widened. Its whole being twitched in excitement. What a scent. What a wonderful, appetizing scent. From nearby, perhaps a mere 1,000 paces ahead, images were being conjured. Words were being interpreted. Emotions were being stirred, all in a majestic, mouth-watering frenzy. The creature crouched, hands on the ground, head back, mouth wide open, and let out a roar that sent a flurry of thin branches to fall to the ground. "Billy, it's time to put the comic book down and get to bed," Billy's mother called from the kitchen. Curled up on the couch with a thick wool blanket, Billy looked up from the colored pages of the book he was cradling. He furrowed his brow. Judging by the melodious lilt in his mother's call, He reckoned he still had a few more minutes of reading before he had to go to bed, really. Despite his mother's repeated requests to the contrary, Billy had left the window directly behind him open. A thin stream of cool air crept in and touched the back of his neck, adding to the shivers the comic book was already providing. His mother continued putting the dishes away. Billy wished she would do it more quietly. He was sure the clanking of the dishes, especially with the window open, could be heard from far away. We don't want whatever lurks out in the woods to know there are people here. Billy jerked his head back toward the window. "Mom, did you hear that?" His mother did not answer. Kneeling on the couch, Billy leaned over to shut the window. He stopped for a moment, taking in a breath of the cold night air. The moon had seemingly vanished in the cloudy sky, and he could see little more than darkness and the faint outline of tall, leafless trees. The absence of moonlight prevented him from seeing the top of the trees, giving the illusion that they stretched up forever. Billy listened again for the sound, but he could hear only the wind. His mother had finally finished with the dishes and was presently on the phone with a friend. Billy decided he was brave. He didn't have to be scared of the wind. He didn't have to listen to his mother. He left the window open, and not without hesitation, went back to his story. The creature stood upright. It extended its arms to either side. Veins and muscles rippled with activity. It shook off the dust and the dirt and took a step forward. As it advanced, its dry skin cracked, releasing a puff of dust and dirt. Its rigid legs creaked forward, its joints grinding against bone like a rusty crank. Its nostrils, almost creatures in their own right, curled outward, stretching and pulling as if their hosts were not moving fast enough. The scent was growing stronger and stronger. Brain activity now nearer and more elaborate, accompanying it with that sweet musk of fear. Just a hint. A pool of moisture formed around the creature's teeth, dripping long, thin lines of yellow slime. Crows left their perches to find sanctuary in the sky. Insects hid under twigs, and the worms dug themselves even deeper into the earth. The wind was the creature's only accomplice, pushing it from behind with a gentle breeze, at the same time wisping in a trail of odors from the front to guide its way. "Billy, I thought I told you to put that away and go to bed. And why do you have the window open? It's freezing." Billy's mother stood at the doorway, hands on her hips. A strong odor of chocolate and fudge swept in from the kitchen. "What's that smell, Mom?" "Those are brownies." "Can I have one?" "They're for the picnic tomorrow, and it's late. You need to get to bed." "Just one more minute, Mom. It's getting to the end of the story." "Billy, it's almost midnight. You can finish the story tomorrow." She grabbed the comic from his hands and set it on the table. "But Mom, the creature is just about to eat the little boy." Billy's mother winced. "My goodness, why would you want to read a story where a monster eats a little boy? That kind of thing will give you nightmares." Billy rolled his eyes. She leaned over the couch and shut the window. "Come on, sweetheart." She took Billy by the hand. "It's bedtime." "But Mom," he contested as he was being pulled off the couch. He contested as he was being led up the stairs. And he contested as he was being tucked into bed. "But Mom, how am I supposed to sleep if I don't know how the story ends?" "It ends with the good little boy doing what his nice mother tells him. and they all live happily ever after. Oh, and the monster dies. Billy scrunched up his nose and frowned. Pleasant dreams, my little pumpkin. She gave Billy a kiss on the forehead, smiled, and walked away. When his mother left his room, Billy wiped the gross kiss mark off his forehead and slipped out of the overly warm covers. He lay in his bed and listened to his mother finish up downstairs, then go to her room down the hall from his. The house was frightfully still. Yet as he strained, he could hear faint noises coming from outside in the woods. Something was out there. He could hear the snap of twigs, growing in frequency and in intensity. It's probably just some animal, he told himself. But what animal? With its nostrils leading the way, the creature trudged through the forest. Its arms now hung low, its sharp claws grazing the ground. It opened its mouth wide, tasting the air filled with promises of things to come. A squirrel dared to stay but a few meters away from the creature, whose nostrils pulled the head in the squirrel's direction. A sniff, and the nostrils rippled. Hair particles stretched out from inside the dark cavities in hopes of procuring more of the scent. Brain activity low was its assessment, not worth the detour. Instead, the creature dropped to all fours and used its arms to propel forward faster. With each bound it was closer. With each bound it was more excited, and long strands of thick saliva hung from its jaw and waved in the wind. Not much farther. Brain activity intense. Sweet, nourishing brains. Billy got out of bed and tiptoed down the hallway. He stopped at the top of the stairs and listened. Not a creature was stirring, at least not in the house. To avoid the creaking steps, he slid down the banister on his stomach, but landed with a thud much louder than he had hoped for. His heart skipped a beat as he expected to hear his mother come out of her room to investigate. After a motionless moment of silence, he breathed a sigh of relief. To his left, he could spy the comic book on the table. To his right, the kitchen. Comic book or brownies? Comic book or brownies? The scent reached his nostrils and propelled him into action. He slipped into the kitchen and snagged a brownie, the smallest one so that his mother wouldn't notice. He tiptoed back to the living room, picked up the comic book, grabbed his trusty flashlight from under the couch, and curled up to finish the story. He put the brownie whole in his mouth, yet still managed a devious smile. As if not devious enough, he twisted his body around, leaning back, and cracked open the window. As he went from frame to frame, from page to page, he munched on the forbidden brownie, trying to pace himself so as to finish it and the story at the same time. The last bit of brownie swallowed, Billy smacked his lips and wiped his mouth. He set the comic book down, not without slight disappointment. The boy is saved and the monster dies. I hate happy endings. Billy got up from the couch, but when he saw the dark, empty staircase he was meant to take to go back to his room, he reconsidered. He talked himself into staying on the couch for the night, telling himself that it wasn't out of fear, but rather that he was quite comfortable there, and that walking up those creaky steps to go to his room would surely wake his mother. Billy wrapped himself in the wool blanket and lay back down on the couch. The window was still open, but he convinced himself to leave it, since he was so brave. He imagined and reimagined the story he had just read, trying his best to come up with a more satisfying ending, one where, for once, the monster wins. How's that for happily ever after, Mom? Content with his revision, A satiated and very much alive monster, Billy fell into a deep, peaceful slumber. The trees gave way to a small clearing, and a bit farther still stood a small house. Its ground floor window was ajar, and the scent of brain activity was slowly streaming out. With each thought and each imagined event, an explosion of delectable odors came tantalizing the over-anxious nostrils. The creature was now at a sprint, its bones cracking in rapid succession, like kindling being consumed by a fire. It stopped just outside the window. The scent was so strong. The creature's muscles pulsated in anticipation. It lifted its gums to expose many rows of teeth, all waiting to be served. The creature stood and flexed. The skin strained to cover what it could, but was ripped into 1,000 thin flakes, raining down on the ground. It reached out to push the window fully open. It stuck its head inside. Just below, just at arm's length below, lay a little boy dreaming and cogitating and imagining what a lovely marinade he is making. As swift as a thought, the creature reached in and grabbed the boy by his little brain-basting skull. It pulled the head, with the little boy attached, up to its mouth, and just as the boy's eyes opened, it sunk a legion of teeth into the savory shell. Little boy hair and little boy bone bits, with a touch of terror and adrenaline, greeting the creature's mouth. The creature sucked the skull dry, then unleashed a slither of tongues to lick it clean from the inside, so as to not waste even one drop. It rammed the hollow shell hole into its mouth. With a violent twist, it ripped it free of the little boy's stem, which it tossed back onto the couch. The creature turned to face the forest, munching on skull scraps. It began its slow walk back. When it reached the trees, it swallowed the last bit and smacked its lips. It arched its head back and let out a roar of satisfaction. The creature dropped to all fours and crawled back into the forest. A satiated and very much alive monster, ready for a deep, peaceful slumber. Thank you all for the support on the last video. I'm glad everybody enjoyed it. I hope you all enjoyed this video as well. I'm going to try to put out at least one or more videos a month, so I hope everybody's excited about that. I hope that's not too long of a wait. I have to record and edit all of this myself, so it does take some time. But with all of that being said, like, subscribe, share the video if you want, and I hope you have a good night and sweet dreams.